talking about milling our own flour today. So yeah, come, let me tell you more. I'm gonna start out by telling you about why I started milling my own flour and why maybe you should try it too, and the benefits that I've noticed so far. And if you just want to skip ahead to the recipe, I'll put a timestamp below so you can skip through my talk and just get to the recipe. So I randomly stumbled on Sue Becker's video called The Staff of Life, and I don't remember what I was looking for. Honestly, I don't know how that video popped up, but it did, and I watched it. I think I watched a couple, maybe like shorter videos explaining like what it is to why people mill or make their own flour and stuff like that. And then I watched her full like 2 hour explanation video. So in her talk, in Sue Becker's talk, she explains how the commercial flour that we buy from the store, isn't as nutritious as it should be. Um, and she kind of talked about the history of it and all. She goes really deep. If you listen to it, you should listen to it actually. She goes really deep into what's wrong with the flour that we buy at the store and why you should be milling your own flour. And she doesn't just like give you like a conspiracy theory. She really does a good job of showing her evidence, and she backs it up with science, and you can go research it yourself and come up to the same conclusion. So that's why she convinced me. Her talk convinced me because it was science based. But then she also came back to show you like what does the Bible say as well, and I really appreciated that. And so I was convinced that wheat is not bad for you as long as you're able to mill it fresh, use it as soon as possible before all the nutrients oxidize. So I started doing it, and I did notice some great benefits almost right away. Um, the first one is no constipation. Benefit definitely was no constipation. I have struggled with constipation my whole life. I used to go up to 5 days without seeing a bowel movement, and like on the 5th day I'd have a massive bowel movement. And that's probably too much information for you, but just so you understand my struggle, that's what was going on. And I have 3 kids under 5, and I started to see that they're kind of having the same issues. So honestly, almost right away you will have a bowel movement, and it'll be a good one. So that has been really helpful. Nowadays I have regular bowel movements, normal bowel movements. So it's been good. The other benefit I've noticed is to drastically reduce the amount of runny noses and colds that we've had this winter. So I used to be the person that during the winter I constantly have a runny nose, like the whole winter. And it used to be so bad that like one of my teachers got me a tissue box that she's like, okay, yeah, it's cold season. This tissue box is for you because we already know you come into school every day and you're gonna always have a cold. So here's a tissue box for you. So that that has been my struggle. But ever since we started milling the wheat, I have noticed, this is my first winter doing this. So I have noticed that we have not had as many colds, even with the kids, as many colds as we would normally have. I saw it in myself and I saw it in my kids. So that has been a really huge blessing. I think it's gotten to the point now that if I see like an inkling of these kids might get sick or I might get sick, I take some bread, put some peanut butter on it, eat it before I go to sleep, wake up in the morning, and I'm good. So I am not a doctor, and this is not medical advice, but that is just my little conspiracy theory that I do. But yeah, so far it's been good. It's been really helpful, and I've seen benefits in myself and my kids. And there are other people with other stories who've been milling for longer, And you can listen to all those if you'd like. I will link Sue Becker's YouTube channel as well as her podcast. She kind of goes over like people's stories and the things that they have noticed that are different for them ever since they started milling their own flour. So I will link those down below. But for now, let's get started on the bread recipe. I got this whole wheat bread recipe from Grains and Grit, and I will link her original recipe below in the description box. I really like this recipe because it doesn't require any sunflower lecithin, no vital wheat gluten, no vitamin C, nothing else fancy. All you need are your wheat berries, some water, some salt, some honey. So it's all about the technique and less about all the fancy ingredients. So I'm gonna move you guys closer so you can actually see the wheat berries. So what I've done is I'm milling 6 cups of wheat berries. I do 3 cups of hard white wheat and then 3 cups of hard red wheat. I have tried this recipe with hard white wheat and spelt, and it's turned out really good as well. So I think any combination will work, but it's 6 cups of wheat berries. And make sure you're using hard wheat and not soft because we're making bread. And so it's gonna mill for a bit, and while it's doing that, we're gonna get the rest of our ingredients ready. In the bowl of the stand mixer, I'm adding 3 3/4 cups of warm water and also adding in the yeast, and then I'm gonna do about 3 cups of flour. So for the yeast, I am using instant yeast, and it's 2 1/4 tablespoons of yeast. So we're gonna mix all of that together until it's well combined. Don't mind me and my wooden spoon. I will change into a whisk soon. After mixing, I'm going to cover it with a light cloth and let it sit and soak for 15 to 20 minutes. While we're waiting on that, I'm going to prepare my loaf pans. This recipe makes 3 loaves of bread. I have 2 glass loaf pans that are 8.5 by 4.5, and then I have a metal pan that is 9 by 5. So I think it'll be interesting to see how the size will affect the rise and look of the bread. But it's been interesting cooking with both the glass and the metal and kind of seeing how they kind of give you a different outcome, each of them. So I like to butter my pans and then the bottoms and the sides, and then I like to cut out a piece of parchment paper and stick that in as well. So I have tried putting butter and flour on the sides instead of parchment paper, but I don't like having the flour on the sides of the bread once it's baked. So for now, I'm going to stick with the parchment paper until I find a better way to get the bread not to stick to the sides of the pan. But especially for the glass pans, I do find that I do need the parchment paper. For the non-stick pan, it comes out actually very easily and it doesn't stick to the sides. After 15 and 20 minutes, we're going to check back in on our mixture and add in the rest of the ingredients. As you can see, the mixture has puffed up a bit and has gotten nice and bubbly. So we're gonna add in our half a cup of oil, our half a cup of honey, and 3¼ teaspoons of salt. Start with the oil and then use the same to add in the honey. That way the honey will come out easier. Once you've added in all the ingredients, we're just going to let it mix until it's well combined. And then we are going to also add in the rest of the remaining flour. So I like to put in all the flour and then leave about 1 or 2 cups left in the bowl that I'll add in slowly later. Okay, so as you can see, I've added in most of my flour, but the dough is still wet. So I'm just going to scrape the sides of the bowl, and then I'm going to incorporate the rest of the flour that's in the bowl and see if we can get it to be a bit more firmer. Okay, so for the rest, about the next 5 to 6 minutes of this video, I have intentionally not sped up the video, no fast forwarding, no speeding up. This is real time how the dough is kneading, because I think it's really important to kind of see the stages of kneading, and it's really critical when you're actually baking the bread to make sure that you're not adding too much flour or too little flour, so you kind of know exactly what texture you're looking for. So I am still adding flour because it's pulled a little bit away but not fully, and I'm just sprinkling a little bit on the sides of the dough until it pulls away. And so now it's moving. This is good movement. That's the type of movement that we're looking for. But you'll notice that it will start sticking again to the sides of the bowl. Just keep adding a little bit of flour. So the movement is happening, but it's still sticking. So we still see residue sticking on the side of the bowl. And we're gonna add just a little bit more flour. Just sprinkling just a little bit of the remaining flour. So it's starting to pull away almost completely. The dough is kind of wrapping around the hook, which is good. Those are all good signs. But then all of a sudden, it gets back to being wet and sticking to the sides of the dough. So we just gotta keep adding the flour and just sprinkling. We're just sprinkling a little bit on all the sides to make sure that they pull away. So this is a good sign. We're very close. I'm just gonna add in a little bit more flour because I do see it sticking on one side a little bit still. So I'm just sprinkling a little bit more flour here. So if you can see, it's kneading really well. there is a little bit of residue on the sides, but it's the actual dough ball is no longer sticking to the sides of the bowl. It's moving on its own. And that the residue of dough that you see on the side there, that if you leave it alone and let it knead, it will clear that up all by itself. You can help it along as well. You can scrape the sides and help it along, which you'll see me do. But if you leave it on its own, it'll clear it for you by itself as it needs. So I'm just gonna aid it along. I'm gonna stop the mixer and scrape the sides of the bowl. And so I think this probably gives you a better picture. It's kneading and it's not sticking to the sides. So it's not coming all the way apart and sticking to the sides. Like it's staying together intact in a ball and kneading. And so this would be the time that you set your timer for 9 to 10 minutes and you just let it knead. In my case with this stand mixer, it does move, so I do have to keep an eye on it and keep pushing it back so it doesn't fall. And so here it's still kneading. Look at that. Look how nice and smooth it looks. Like that's what you're looking for. It's a nice smooth dough ball and it's kneading really well. It's not sticking anywhere. And that's what I meant by it clears the bowl for you. So over time as it kneads, it clears the sides of the bowl for you. You don't necessarily have to scrape it, but it doesn't hurt to scrape it either. And that's our dough. So it has been 9-10 minutes now, and the dough will be sticky, but the solution for that is to just oil your hands and oil the surface that you're going to put the dough on, and it'll be very easy to handle. We're going to take out our dough and place it on our oiled surface, and make sure that you oil your hands as well, and then that makes it easier to like move it around and it won't be sticking to your hand. So you're going to take your dough and split it into 3 pieces. I like to weigh each piece so that I get even sized loaves, but you don't have to. You just need 3 pieces of dough. You're going to take each piece of dough and flatten it out. You can just use your fingers and the palms of your hand, or you can use a rolling pin. What you want is to flatten out the dough and then start rolling it from one end to the other. So you're forming a log. You'll have a nice chunky looking log, and then you want to tuck the ends under. Then you're going to smooth out the dough to get a nice log shape. Once you've shaped your dough, place it into the prepared loaf pan. So that's our first loaf. We're going to do the exact same thing with the next 2 pieces of dough. Hey, so I wanted you guys to notice something about this second one that I'm doing. Watching it back, I think I realize now why this bread did not rise as well as the other 2. If you notice, my tucking and also my rolling is not as tight as the first one was. So when the dough is shaped, it's a little bit more sloppy. It's not as tight and uniform. And so when I place it into the metal pan, it does rise, but I don't get as good of a rise as the other 2. And you'll notice that at the end of the video. The rise is just not quite the same. And I did this recipe again. I've done it a couple, like couple times already. I've done it again, and I got a much better rise on the bigger loaf pan because I did a tighter shaping. So make sure that when you're shaping the dough, when you're rolling it tightly, not loosely, very tight, nice and tight. And then when you're tucking, you're also tucking in so that it's nice and tight. So this last one that I'm doing a better job of making it nice and tight. And so you'll notice the difference in how they rise. So the shaping of the dough is critical in your rise. So shape your dough well, and I will show you guys a comparison of how these rose and then how another batch that I did rose. And the main difference was just the shaping of the dough. Next, we're going to cover the loaf pans with a light cloth. I'm using a flour sack towel. And then we're going to let the dough rise in a warm place until it's about an inch above the rim of the pan. That can take anywhere from 30 to 40 minutes. I usually like to just preheat my oven and place my pans on top of the stove and let it rise that way. Our oven is preheated at 350 degrees. And we are going to place them in the oven now and bake them for about 35 minutes. After 35 minutes, the bread is ready. So as you'll notice, the bread that is in the glass pans rolls higher, and I believe that's because of the way that I shaped them. Those two were shaped a lot more tightly than the one in the metal pan. And yes, the metal pan is bigger, so that does contribute to the shape and the rise as well. But I did do this recipe again a different day, and I got a nicer rise on the metal pan because I did shape it more tightly and not as loosely. And I will show that to you right now. So as you can see, I got a higher rise on the metal pan this time around. And that's just through shaping. Once the bread is baked, we are going to butter the tops of the bread so that we can get a nice soft crust. And then if you just wait maybe like 10 minutes, it will be a lot easier to get the bread out of the loaf pans. I was impatient and I did a lot of extra maneuvering to get the bread out. So don't be like me. Just wait 10 minutes and then you can easily take them out of the glass pans without doing a lot of legwork. So we're going to take them out and let them rest on the wire rack. And usually I do this at night, so I just let the bread stay on the wire rack overnight, and then in the morning I go ahead and cut the bread. It is the next morning, so I'm just gonna cut up the bread pieces and place them in my bread bag. I do use a plastic bread bag because I find that it keeps the bread soft. And then I do not put my bread in the fridge, I just leave it on the counter. But once I slice it up, I usually share one loaf with somebody, and then I put one loaf in the freezer and then one loaf we eat throughout the week. And then since I cut it up, it's nice that if you put it in the freezer, you just take out a piece as you need it. Alright, that's it folks, that's the bread. Make yourself some bread and then go share some bread. Till next time, see ya.